Up, we've got a pretty incredible show. We're gonna jump right in.
Vážení spoluobčané, obracím se na vás v této velmi těžké chvíli. Všechny nás dnes hluboce zasáhla zpráva o tragickém útoku na Filozofické fakultě Univerzity Karlovy v centru Prahy. Nejprve mi dovolte vyjádřit nejhlubší soustrast blízkým a přátelům všech obětí.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here?
When I'm Prime Minister, I will keep my promises.
Isn't it funny to listen to a trust fund baby lecturing Canadians about being too rich?
Mr. Speaker, we see proof that the Conservatives simply don't understand that low-income families don't benefit from tax breaks because they don't pay taxes.
Canadians are struggling to put food on the table, and what are the Liberals doing? Well, they're giving $25 million to Costco and Loblaws. And what are the...
Speaker, the NDP leader was just asking about why the Prime Minister gave tens of millions of dollars in corporate handouts to powerful grocery chains. So the answer, of course, is that he voted to let the Prime Minister do that. Not a single penny of that money could have gone without the vote of the NDP coalition partner. But
Mr. Speaker, we can see very clearly that all the stories out about the lobbyists' connections with the Leader of the Opposition are actually hurting the Leader of the Opposition, which is why he's asking those questions of the NDP. But he has an opportunity right now, Mr. Speaker.
You know, this show reminds me of a 25-cent cigar.
Oh, yeah? Why is that?
Because it's cheap and it stinks.
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Elections, but you, as Minister of Foreign Affairs, know nothing. How is that possible?
Well, when it comes to activities of foreign actors in the country, the Foreign Affairs Minister was not made aware. And since then, I've made sure that that changed, that would not be the case, because obviously, as everybody around this table would be aware,
You've asked to be briefed. You didn't know anything in December.
Can I just finish my sentence, please, Michael? So obviously, in the context, as colleagues...
Hey gang, what's up? Just Aaron, right here, Question Period Canada. How y'all doing? You recognize Melanie Joly, our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Global Affairs? Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
I was a teacher out in Vancouver. I attended an end-of-year gala where the theme was Arabian Nights. And I dressed up in an Aladdin costume and put makeup on. I shouldn't have done that.
Oops, you made a mistake, that's all. And making mistakes is never fun.
So you want to vote for a pretty boy Canadian named Justin. What could possibly go wrong?
I made a mistake, and I'm sincerely sorry.
I think our leader, Trudeau, I don't think I've ever heard him say a true word.
I admit I came in physical contact with a number of members as I extended my arm in, including someone behind me who I did not see. If anyone feels that they were impacted by my actions, I completely apologize. It's not my intention to hurt anyone. On behalf of all of us in this House, I would like to present unreserved apologies for what took place on Friday, and to President Zelensky and the Ukrainian delegation for the position they were put in. For all of us who were present to have unknowingly recognized this individual was a terrible mistake and a violation of the memory of those who suffered grievously at the hands of the Nazi regime.
I think the public might be looking at you and your position right now and thinking, for the good of the Liberal Party, why is he staying on?
Thank you for your concern, Laura. I know there are lots of folks in Ottawa thinking about process. I'm focused on results for Canadians. I'm focused on delivering the kinds of things that are going to set Canada and Canadians up for success over the coming decades, because that's the moment we're in right now.
Hey gang, what's up? Just Aaron right here, Question Period Canada. Do you recognize our fearless leader from the introduction there? What could possibly go wrong with electing Justin Trudeau? Well, we've seen that the last few years, right? Anyhow, this guy apologizes so often. How many times in your life have you had to apologize to the world, to your nation, to other nations? This guy is a disaster. He's not getting better. He has this interview with Max from Cpac, and he is just full of it, guys. Something happened with this guy, Trudeau. Let's take a look at the stuff he's trying to sell to Canadians right now. He's still apologizing. Let's take a peek.
Social policy is interesting because it can work and it can be successful or viewed positively in the moment. History can look back on it and say, we got it wrong and we've made a huge mistake. In the context of where you were on Friday and what you're going to be doing tomorrow with a couple of major apologies, I'm wondering what you think the biggest mistake when it comes to social policy is in the last 25 years or so. What have we got wrong in this country?
We've got it pretty good in Canada. In contrast to our neighbors, perhaps in some ways, we've avoided a lot of some of the social tensions that other people have had, or they've been placed in different orders, different places, and that has led to sometimes a kind of complacency that leads to blind spots. When we compare ourselves to some of the very real challenges that our nearest neighbors are struggling with, whether it be around race, whether it be around poverty, we all remember the videos of Katrina, we can sort of sit back and say, oh, you know what, at least in Canada we're doing pretty well. And that's not true. And it's certainly not true for everyone. And being much more aware of people living with systemic and real challenges and vulnerabilities, whether it be racialized communities, whether it be Indigenous peoples, of course, or whether it be just people falling through the cracks, I don't think there has been enough attention paid to the voiceless who haven't been doing very well. And don't get noticed because they're voiceless. And I think that's something that all of us are working hard to turn around, but we have a long way to go.
Wait for it, guys. There's another apology coming to the LGBTQ community. What the? Come on, Trudeau.
There's a big announcement, tomorrow, in terms of an apology to members of the LGBT community who were in the military, who were discriminated against and more because of who they are. What do you want what you say tomorrow to say about us as a nation?
What an awkward goofball Trudeau is, guys.
There's a big announcement, tomorrow, in terms of an apology to members of the LGBT community who were in the military, who were discriminated against and more because of who they are. What do you want what you say tomorrow to say about us as a nation?
I was a teacher out in Vancouver. I attended an end-of-year gala where the theme was Arabian Nights. And I dressed up in an Aladdin costume and put makeup on. I shouldn't have done that.
I think there's a really interesting and important discussion to have around apologies and around ills of the past. And certainly a number of people are highlighted, and I have this reflection as well, that my father might have had a different perspective on it than I do. He came at it as an academic, as a constitutionalist. I come at it as a teacher, as someone who's worked a lot in communities. And the apologies for things past are important to make sure that we actually understand and know and share and don't repeat those mistakes. That's why a big piece of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission asked us to ensure that we were changing school curricula so students actually get, non-Aboriginal students across the country get the right kind of education about this. But apologies are also really important to be able to move forward in a healing way that acknowledges the very real intergenerational impacts or impacts on an individual around mental health, around self-worth, around how you fit into your community. I mean, for me, it comes back to that question of, well, why do we still feel it important for politicians to march in gay pride parades, for example? It's still important. There is still so much discrimination that recognizing it will make a big difference, and it will also help a whole bunch of people who would never have to, hopefully wouldn't have to go through in their future careers the kind of discrimination that happened in the past decades, but also remind everyone else that we do have to change mindsets.
I admit I came in physical contact with a number of members as I extended my arm in, including someone behind me who I did not see. If anyone feels that they were impacted by my actions, I completely apologize. It's not my intention to hurt anyone.
So you want to vote for a pretty boy Canadian named Justin. What could possibly go wrong?
We all know that the rules of the House do not permit us to eat in this place. And I can't help but observing that during the last vote, a number of people were eating in their seats, including the Minister of Defence, the Minister of Canadian Heritage, and the Prime Minister, who appeared to be hiding a bagel in his desk. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has already stained this place with corruption. He does not need to stain it with mustard as well. Exactly.
Order. Right Honourable Prime Minister, on the same point of order. Order.
Indeed, Mr. Speaker, I apologize. It was a chocolate bar, but I apologize. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank the Honourable Member for Lanark Frontenac.
So gang, what do you think? A long history of apologies. Oops, you made a mistake, that's all. Trudeau, he keeps making these mistakes, and when he apologizes, I feel personally like he resents the fact that he has to do it, and it's for you. That's not the deal with an apology, right? Like, if you make a mistake, oops, I made a mistake. Yeah, mean it when you apologize. He just keeps making more mistakes. We need an election. We certainly do need an election. My name's Aaron. This is Question Period Canada. We have a blast here every day watching the question periods when they're sitting in Parliament, which is not that often. But we always have a live show. Come and join the community. Check out the chat. It's fun. It's clean. I think you'll like it. Come and hang out with us someday. Like, subscribe, share, get notified, all those fun things. Check out one of the videos that are floating around here. We're getting better at making some of these. So yes, come and join us. My name's Aaron, Question Period Canada. We'll catch you next video.
Hey everyone, Michelle Frere here, Member of Parliament for Peterborough, Kawartha, and I'm just going in to speak with a few people who are having difficulties with Liberal programming. I know, shocking. And as I was driving downtown Peterborough, I saw folks on the side of the street using substances, and which is a fairly common thing here in Peterborough and across the country. And it made me think about, why do people use substances, right? It's often a coping mechanism. We talk a lot about this when we're studying sort of domestic violence, and we're studying all these really hard things and trauma, which we look at a lot of in Status of Women Committee. And sometimes, you were prescribed substances and, they were highly addictive. Maybe you got hurt at work, or something happened to you, or you had a surgery, or there's all different things, but it's ultimately pain management, whether that's physical pain or emotional or psychological pain. Substances mask how you feel, right? Because if you feel terrible, it's very hard to sit with your feelings if you've never learned how to do that in a good way. And I couldn't help but think about how our government, our federal government, and in particular Justin Trudeau, has made life so much worse for Canadians. We have the lowest GDP that we've ever had. That means that we are poorer than we've ever had. So that means we've never worked so hard and made such little money. We've never been poorer. And the toll that takes on your morale and your ability to provide for your family, and that overwhelming feeling, and the most vulnerable get crunched out here, the middle class and the people who are already at the bottom end of the socioeconomic pole. And so, you think about how diabolical it is that we have an opioid crisis in this country, we have a drug crisis in this country, and we have a low productivity and a low quality of life in this country. Those two things are not coincidental. And, when you think about safe supply, which is just the most ludicrous concept ever, it is not safe ever. You have people, letting somebody have unsupervised drug use is the most uncompassionate thing you can do. If somebody is self-harming themselves, which is what drugs do, it is self-harm. It is not good for you. It is self-harm. And if the people around you are not helping you through that, are not helping you understand why, not offering you treatment and recovery options, not helping you break free from that cycle, that's not compassionate leadership. It is compassionate to meet people where they're at and not have judgment. It is not compassionate to leave them there. And there are so many amazing solutions to this crisis. And Justin Trudeau's wacko policies turn a blind eye to it. Go to Bruce Oak Recovery Center in Winnipeg. Unbelievable. And they did it. And these are treatment and recovery facilities. We have Right to Heal here in Peterborough. This is Peggy Shaughnessy. This woman has dedicated her entire life to understanding trauma and addictions. She has answers. She doesn't get any federal funding, and it's just wild what they've created in this narrative that they've created. And they will not accept reality. They just don't accept reality. I called them out in the House of Commons on this last week. And one of the ministers, I said, who's protecting our children? Because the Minister of Families and Children said it's not her responsibility and it's not her problem. It's not her problem that the number one cause of death for kids aged 10 in British Columbia is opioids. It's not her problem. So my question was, well, whose problem is it? If it's not your problem, who is the Minister for Children? Whose problem is it? And who's going to protect these children and make the legalization, stop the legalization of crack, meth, and fentanyl? And you know what? Do you know what the minister did after question period? She got up and she asked me to apologize for using the word addicts. That's what they're going to fight on. So I phoned a couple people I know, and I'm like, who work in the industry. I asked a former addict. I said, is this an offensive word? No, Michelle, that's what it is. That is reality. And it's like, you can't change nomenclature. You can't change the words to fit your narrative or to make, we're offending people. You know what's hurting people? Wacko policies that give out drugs, that further addiction, wacko policies where you can't find affordable housing, wacko policies that despite going to work and working hard
Hello everyone, I'm Michael Serapio. Well, Ottawa is answering British Columbia's call, announcing today that it will allow the province to scale back a pilot program that decriminalizes small amounts of heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, and fentanyl. With this approval, it means BC can once again make it illegal to use those drugs in public spaces, but that does not end the debate.
So he refuses to rule out repeating this disastrous experiment that killed 2,500 British Columbians. Because he strongly supports decriminalization And if he got a chance, he would do it all over again in Toronto, in Montreal, and anywhere else. Mr. Speaker, the final question, therefore, is even the radical NDP government in BC asked for him to reverse his decriminalization. Why did it take him 10 days and 66 more deaths to do it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Again, Mr. Speaker, we see the extent to which the Leader of the Opposition will make political attacks on the backs of the most vulnerable people in this country.
That's right.
We actually only received the completed request from British Columbia Friday last week and approved it the following Monday, 3 days later, Mr. Speaker. We will always respond quickly in a science-based way when people's lives are on the line. The Leader of the Opposition is continuing to spread falsehoods, Mr. Speaker, instead of actually following the facts and caring for Canadians.
Well, with their thoughts on the debate and Ottawa's decision, we're now joined by Talib Nur Mohammed, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Heritage Minister, Melissa Lantsman, the Deputy Conservative Leader, and Gord Johns, the NDP critic for mental health and harm reduction. Hello to all three of you.
Hi. Hello.
Mr. Nur Mohammed, I'll get you to start us off here because, you know, not only are you a parliamentary secretary, but you're also a Vancouver area MP. I hear the Prime Minister say that it was only last Friday that the full paperwork was submitted. But as you know, the province, your province, was asking for this scale back a week before that. So how will you explain that delayed timeline to the voters in your riding?
I think, first of all, it's important to note what exactly this is about. This is about a pilot project that the NDP government asked for several months ago. We acceded to that request. They asked for that to be amended. We've acceded to that request. And it's very important to understand that when they made the request, the specifics of the request were received on Friday. That's what we were responding to. And so now the real issue is to make sure that in this conversation we use a science-based, fact-based approach rather than misrepresenting the facts. The fact is that this program was put in place to save lives. The effort was made by the province of British Columbia. Now, there were other things that were needed to be done alongside the decisions that were made around treatment, all of those different important pillars. But the fact is that the reason for this was to make sure that the fentanyl deaths that were happening as a result of unsafe drugs in people's hands, that those were mitigated. The reality is that you can't help people who have already died. And so the objective of this program, as the BC government requested and noted, was to try and save lives. They have recognized that there are challenges. They came to us with this request. That request has been met.
Ms. Lantsman, what do you say to that? Because, you know, I hear your party hit the federal government on this one hard, but at the end of the day, this is a program that BC, as a provincial government, wanted to try out with the intent of saving lives.
This is an ideological crusade by this government to legalize smoking crack, smoking meth, shooting up in playgrounds, in public places. It is responsible for the death of 2,500 British Columbians last year, 40,000 since this government came into place. This will go down as one of the most insane policies that the government enthusiastically supported and then waited 11 days with some weird explanation about when paperwork was done to turn back. Even the radical NDP in BC decided that this was too radical for them, and the Prime Minister today could not disavow decriminalization. So we want to know what he believes and what he's going to do next and where.
Mr. Johns, what's your take of it? Because you have the two sides right there beside you. On the one hand, arguing that this is for an effort to save lives. The other saying that it just doesn't make sense if you want to save lives.
Well, first of all, my heart goes out to all the victims and the families of the loved ones that have died to this tragic crisis. And as we know, in a health crisis, incrementalism costs lives, and the Liberals have taken a slow approach in terms of responding to this health emergency. They still haven't declared a national public health emergency. The Conservatives' disinformation also costs lives. I mean, it's completely false that decriminalization is the cause of the toxic drug crisis or the reason people are dying. We've heard from police that they wanted some tools to be able to deal with public drug use, but they also said that criminalizing people causes more harm and they don't want to go back to it. We can look to Alberta, where they don't have decriminalization, where they don't have a safer supply. Now, you know, as of today, when we saw the release of the BC Coroner's report, that Alberta now has the highest death rate per capita in the country. In fact, Lethbridge is triple that of British Columbia, and they don't have decriminalization. They don't have safer supply. The things that the Conservatives like to cite when they point to the reason people are dying. They're dying from poison drugs manufactured by organized crime. That is according to the police, to health officials, and this disinformation is harmful. It creates more stigma. And it creates a lot of hurt to the families of the loved ones, when in fact we need to come together, we need to declare a public health emergency and have a robust debate how we move forward together as a nation in the middle of this health crisis.
I think it's important to note, Michael, that when this policy was requested by the government of British Columbia, it was in partnership with the City of Vancouver, local police, local law enforcement who came forward and said, we support this. So when our government looked at that request, we made the evidence-based, science-based decision. And as Gord rightly pointed out, if you look at the magnitude, the quantum of deaths in a place like Alberta and the Conservative government, the far-right Conservative government in Alberta, and Saskatchewan, the lives that are being lost there without any openness to looking at ways to save lives, that speaks volumes for what a Poilievre government would do, which is frankly to put at risk more and more and more Canadians and play politics with people's lives. We're not going to do that. I think it's really important for Canadians to understand the rationale for doing this, the rationale for pulling it back, and the urgent need to look at treatment of addictions, to look at safe supply, to look at all of the elements and tools available in our arsenal to make the right decisions in a four-pillars approach to saving lives.
Michael, why don't you let me tell you what a Pierre Poilievre government do? We will ban hard drugs. We will ban smoking crack in a hospital room. We will ban shooting up in a playground next to schools. And we will ensure that those who are affected by addiction get the treatment that they need. We have two parties here arguing still that decriminalization is the way forward, that these kinds of insane programs are the way forward. And we want to make sure that
Melissa,
they
it's
both
hard to support healthcare when you keep cutting funding for it, you keep voting against it.
They both tell us that they won't do this elsewhere, that they wouldn't do this in Toronto, that they wouldn't do this in Montreal. We have the right to know, and Canadians have the right to know, whether they believe in decriminalization or not. We hear that Gord absolutely does, and we haven't heard the Liberals disavow legalization and their failed experiment, which has killed thousands of people and diverted drugs. It kills thousands every year, and it kills 6 people a day. It took them 11 days to tell Canadians that this was not a plan that they were going to go forward, and they still can't say that it's not something that they're going to go forward with in Toronto, in Montreal, in Halifax, and anywhere else that asks.
But Ms. Landsman, if, and this is picking up on what we heard from Mr. Johns there, if the Vancouver Police are in favor of trying a pilot program, if the city, the provinces, why not allow them to try to save lives best they can by trying something different rather than just the status quo?
The pilot program has failed. Even the radical NDP BC government, who has been for this, has come crawling for to ask the Liberals to go back on this failed experiment. We want to know if the federal government is in favor of decriminalization. It's clear that the answer is yes, because it's not no, and we want to know that if they're going to expand this program to places like Toronto and Montreal. Canadians have a right to know that.
Mr. Nur Mohammed, how would you answer that question? Is the government prepared to expand this program and try other pilots?
Well, Ms. Landsman is entitled to her opinions, but not to her own facts. What are the facts? The facts are the province of British Columbia, alongside the City of Vancouver and the VPD and other law enforcement, came forward and said,
thank you, bud. That's awesome. We're just having fun here. Thank you. That's awesome, though. Amazing. You're so kind. Back into the show.
that we would like to try this. We reviewed the application. We accepted their request. They came back and said, look, this isn't working in the form that it's in right now. We said, That's what you want. We will accede to that request, and we will grant the request that you've got. Those are the facts. We are a science-based, evidence-based government. When provincial governments come to us, regardless of their political stripe, with things that they would like to try to save lives, we are going to assess those and evaluate them on their merits. Ms. Landsman can make up whatever narrative she would like. That's up to her. But the facts are the facts, and what we have done and what we will continue to do is to do everything that we can in our power to save lives.
That's
our
you are open. You are open. Well, you are open then as a government to try this pilot elsewhere.
What we have said, and what we will continue to say, is if there are means that are brought forward that are evidence-based, with the backing of the relevant authorities, with the backing of the relevant data, that show that we can save lives in this urgent moment in our history where people are dying from toxic drugs, we should be open to looking at what the science says, not making ideological decisions.
I hear the word urgency, and again, back to urgency. What we're not seeing from this federal government is treating this as a health emergency. They've spent less than 1% of resources that they applied to COVID-19, yet we've lost more lives in my home province of British Columbia. The province of BC is looking for a federal partner. We can look at what the Conservatives will do when we look to Alberta and Saskatchewan, where it's a disaster. The death rates from toxic drugs are skyrocketing. Their single-focus policies are a complete...
The Liberals need more time to find Melanie Joly's imaginary friend. The Privy Council has just taken a 30-day extension to turn over documents on the Liberals' use of a dormant X account to promote their latest inflationary budget. Foreign Affairs shared a trailer video for the federal budget on X, formerly Twitter, on April 5th. The video opens with a screenshot of a tweet from an account, Amy Sminson, that reads, "I wish Budget 2024 had a trailer so Canadians could know what we're getting into." Intrepid X users who searched for the account with the handle @Vern, as seen in the video, did not find someone concerned about free birth control, but rather a long dormant account from a man in Florida who seems to like Jessica Alba, Jessica Simpson, Justin Bieber, and innocuous memes. The Liberals made someone up to support their budget. I guess supply did not meet the demand. When the lie was uncovered, the Liberals told the National Post the account was simply used for quote-unquote artistic effect, which of course was not at all marked in the trailer. It was simply good old-fashioned Liberal disinformation. So Rebel News wanted to know more about this failed scheme to mislead Canadians. When did it start? Have they done this before? Was anyone at all concerned that lying to Canadians was the wrong thing to do? Did anyone involved have apprehensions? Did they even try to find a Liberal on X who might be eagerly awaiting the disastrous Liberal budget to use in the fake news video instead? And what did these professional liars have to say for themselves when the clever Canadian public saw right through their taxpayer-funded nonsense? Well, a records request was submitted in early April 2024 by Rebel News, asking for all communications records pertaining to the fake account Amy Sminson. They didn't even try to get a real sounding name, or the X handle @Vern109 since January 2023. The filing will require an additional month for the PCO to fulfill. Sounds like the Privy Council has a lot of documents on good old Amy Sminson. The records, according to information bureaucrats in the PCO, will now be available June 8th, 2024. That's a long time to find their imaginary friend. To support this access filing request and the research associated with it, please consider making a donation at rebelinvestigates.com. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn-Reid. If you would like to help offset the research and filing costs for this access to information filing, but the dozens of other access to information filings we send in every single week, please consider making a donation at a special fund, rebelinvestigates.com. Thanks in advance.
I don't think it'll affect it at all. I think a lot of people are using marijuana now. I don't think it's going to make any difference.
That'll be complicated. There's so many different levels to consider, recreational use and how that's going to impact the average person. How's that going to look? We know that alcoholism is an issue, and that's a legal drug, so yeah, we're going to have more issues with that with marijuana as well. How's each community going to deal with how that's sold and regulated? That's just at the community level. Yeah, it's going to be complicated. I think people really underestimate the potential negative effects of marijuana too. It's I see it being marketed as a panacea for everything. It'll make you feel better. It'll help with your pain, and sometimes it doesn't. And I don't think people realize that. So it'll be kind of complicated.
I don't think it's going to have too much of an effect here. I think most people who are pot users are going to be using it whether it's legal or illegal. I don't think that ever stopped anyone. Maybe the few more dispensaries up, I think that might affect the community with sales. Maybe the economy boosts a bit, but I don't see any kind of a real negative effect to it as of yet. If it's going to be regulated the way the federal government intends it to be regulated, and as long as our province follows suit with it, I don't see any real negative effect to it.
I think it's going to affect it in a good way. It'll probably lead to some good tax, revenues and things like that, and probably good for public health.
I think it's going to probably cause maybe a lot more addictions in terms of with marijuana, and probably some confusion and some gray area on trying to teach our kids right from wrong and certain drugs, for sure.
You're using drugs, you're using a substance. People want to believe it's good for them, but that's just naive.
I think it's gonna be beneficial for communities just to have the use of recreational marijuana open, right? In terms of taking jobs away from the black market, right? And it starts with education and informing people on the use of marijuana, but also the right way of going on about that.
Like when it comes to recreational use, I think everybody is like with Vancouver, it's kind of pretty much legal here anyway. So for the greater Vancouver, it doesn't feel like it's going to have that big of an impact. But I think it's going to be a positive thing. I'm all for decriminalization of drugs, especially I think it's going to help heal people. It's going to give people more access to better quality products. So I think it will be a positive thing and continue to expand people's choice and freedom and education.
I don't see a massive change. That I understand that there hasn't, elsewhere where it's happened, there hasn't been a huge change, that organised crime hasn't particularly gone down. It's changed, but it hasn't gone down. And I understand also that usage hasn't particularly gone up. I guess you'd notice it more when you're walking around, but yeah, my understanding from what's happened in the States where they have legalised it, the impact has not been huge either way.
I feel like some people have strong opinions about the changes that they're going to make, but overall I feel like we'll get used to it over time, and hopefully it's for the best.
Already marijuana being legal or not is affecting communities because people see it as a way to escape the reality they live in, but underneath there are things that are not going to be fixed simply by using marijuana. Using or having legal marijuana is going to definitely help ensure that there is more money coming into our benefit as community, but at the same time there is going to be black market everywhere.
Obviously, there's going to be pluses and minuses. On the plus side, legislating and regulating something that up to date has been unregulated will probably be helpful for a lot of people that do use marijuana. It would be great to see dosages and amounts of THC or CBD, just like when you buy a vitamin, you know what you're getting, or when you buy alcohol, you know the alcohol content. Minuses, people are going to be more impaired driving, things like that, but I don't like to be negative looking forward. Hopefully people act responsibly.
It's kind of like the way that when alcohol was prohibited, there's going to be a whole different social focus, I think.
I think largely positively, because largely most communities, I believe, are sort of suffering from the effects of criminalization of marijuana, where people are being sent to jail, families are being broken up, young people are being punished overwhelmingly more than older people are, and I think that's going to be beneficial to society if those people back in the workforce and not in prison.
Well, there are already quite a few marijuana dispensaries that have opened up where I live, and we live quite close to several elementary schools, and so I'm a bit concerned about how much they're going to be marketing to, what age groups.
I think the public might be looking at you and your position right now and thinking, for the good of the Liberal Party, why is he staying on?
Thank you for your concern, Laura. I know there are lots of folks in Ottawa thinking about process. I'm focused on results for Canadians. I'm focused on delivering the kinds of things that are going to set Canada and Canadians up for success over the coming decades, because that's the moment we're in right now.
All right, so he's not focused on the polls, he's focused.
That's not Dad.
Yes, it is.
But you don't look like Dad.
Oh, I don't like to be looking at it.
Oh, my Alice, I'm not too late, am I, girl? You haven't got him planted. God love him. But sure, I lost Cassie out in Topsail somewhere. A bit of a problem with Rowley. They did a lovely job on him here. Took him some long time to go, though, didn't it, girl?
Yes, the doctor said he had a heart like a horse, Bet, 'cause he was always contrary.
Mom, come over here. Look, I want to get a picture of you with the coffin.
That's what I will not. Look, going to Google, what's she like?
My God, though, Alice, they must make some old money here, what? Well, the funeral parlor and the hall for weddings and the ambulance service. Hatching, matching, and dispatching, what? No, Alice. No disrespect intended, honey.
None taken, Bet.
When's Jim getting in?
He was supposed to get into St. John's an hour ago. He should be here soon. Where's Tommy?
I don't know. I think he's out in the truck.
Judas in the big one. If that comes in here now in the horrors after drinking whiskey.
Where is he? Where's the old man? Where is he? Where is he?
Well, I tell you one thing, he was all heart for. He gave you the last cent in his pocket.
Yeah, when he was drunk.
He gives us his all. Speed, endurance, power. Yet his wild spirit burns bright.
Justin Trudeau will do just about anything to silence Canadians who disagree with him. Today, he sunk to another low, this time using his partisan hack, Liberal Speaker Greg Fergus, to silence the leader of the opposition, the leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre. Today in the House of Commons, Poilievre said what most Canadians know to be true about Justin Trudeau, and that is that Justin Trudeau is a wacko who has implemented a series of wacko policies that are destroying our country. Poilievre said this in the context of calling on Trudeau to reverse his wacko drug policies, specifically his policy of decriminalization of hard drugs in British Columbia. Hard drugs like meth, crack, and fentanyl that have caused chaos and death throughout British Columbia communities. Drug addicts are overdosing in hospitals, community centers, and in parks. Last year, a record 2,500 British Columbians lost their lives due to a drug overdose. It's so bad that even the radical and pro-drug NDP government are calling on Trudeau to reverse his wacko hard drug decriminalization policy. So in the normal course, Justin Trudeau would have to stand up in the House and answer for his disastrous policies. But to avoid doing so, he no doubt ordered his hack speaker, Greg Fergus, to do something new, to silence the leader of the opposition by actually kicking Poilievre out of the House chamber. This is outrageous, and it is part of a pattern of Trudeau silencing Canadians and those who are prepared to stand up to him. This is the same Justin Trudeau that froze the bank accounts of law-abiding Canadians, the same Prime Minister, the same Justin Trudeau who illegally invoked the Emergencies Act to crush peaceful protesters, the same Justin Trudeau who has passed online censorship laws, and now today Justin Trudeau used the Speaker to silence the Leader of the Opposition by literally throwing him out of the chamber that he was duly elected to speak on behalf of Canadians in. It demonstrates once again that Justin Trudeau is an ever-present threat to our democracy, and his wacko policies are killing Canadians as we speak.
Yeah, yeah, it looks like we made it. Look how far we've come, baby.
The most important person in the whole wide world is you, and you hardly even know you. The most important person in the whole wide world is you. Come on, we'll show you. Let's find out more about the things you feel and do, 'cause you're the most important person in the world to you.
I was cutting with my scissors, cutting out a picture of a painting I had painted of a person's face. I really liked it, and I tried to be real careful, the corners in it, out of every place. And then it happened, something happened, and I felt so bad that I cried and cried. Yes, I felt so bad, 'cause I really tried.
Whoops, you made a mistake, that's all. And making mistakes is never fun to say. Oops, I made a mistake, that's all. And mistakes can happen to anyone.
I was
Budget policy. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Minister is not worth the crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder. It has now been 10 days and 60 dead British Columbians since the government of that province has asked the Prime Minister to reverse his deadly and radical legalization of crack, heroin, and other hard drugs in children's parks, hospitals, on transit. Why will he not reverse his radical agenda?
The Honourable Minister for Mental Addictions and Health.
Mr. Speaker, communities in BC are facing an extremely serious challenge. It is a toxic drug supply on the streets, and people are dying. We know that public consumption is an issue of concern, which is exactly why, Mr. Speaker, BC is amending their proposal, and we have been working with them every step of the way. We're treating this with the urgency it deserves, and all partners are at the table right now, Mr. Speaker, to find the path forward, working with law enforcement and health services so that we get this right and save lives, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, to find a path forward, the path forward is obvious. Ban hard drugs, invest in treatment, bring our loved ones home drug-free. Now, that minister claimed last week that she was waiting for the BC government to provide information before she could decide on reversing radical legalization. It turns out the government had given her that information within hours of the request. She has all the information, so why are her and her radical boss clinging on to this insane policy?
The Honourable Minister for Mental Health and Addictions.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we follow science, we follow healthcare experts, and we follow the information. We are working with BC on a comprehensive amendment to their proposal. This takes collaborative work, Mr. Speaker, to get it right. This is a health issue, Mr. Speaker, not a criminal one. The Leader of the Opposition is misleading Canadians in not recognizing that people need health care. They do not need to be re-stigmatized and criminalized.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Abbotsford Soccer Association wrote a letter entitled "A Cry for Change." Volunteers with the organization have found dirty needles that can puncture innocent children in the playing field. Other BC fields have had women raped and overdose, have found addicts naked, have had pets actually overdose because there's so much drug contamination on the site. What are they thinking over there?
The Honourable Minister of Finance and Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, a pilot project was put in place at BC's request. BC now has serious concerns about some aspects of that. We share those concerns and we are addressing them. But I do want to say, Mr. Speaker, I do not think there is a family in Canada that is untouched by the tragedy of opioids. And I think that it is absolutely abhorrent to try to score political points off the pain of Canadians.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals delay in protecting women's rights, and the Conservatives straight up want to attack women's rights. Last year, they brought in a motion attacking a woman's right to choose. Right now, they are blocking free birth control for women. And later on this week, they're going to go and attend an anti-choice rally. New Democrats want more freedom, more choices, and more affordability for women. So will the government support us in stopping the Conservatives from denying 9 million Canadians free birth control?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Let me state it clearly and unequivocally. Every woman in this country, every part of this country, must have access to the oral contraceptives that she needs to have control over her reproductive future. Any party that stands in the way of that is standing in the way of basic freedom for women in this country to have freedom and autonomy over their body. I will say to the Conservative Party of Canada, stop blocking this so that women can get the reproductive aids they need to have control over their reproductive futures.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South. Mr. Speaker, free contraceptives will save women hundreds of dollars and give them more freedom to choose. But the Conservatives want to block that. They want women to pay more and have less freedom. But New Democrats won't allow it. Will the government vote with us today to ensure that 9 million people have access to free contraceptives? The Honourable Minister of Health. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's a question of freedom for women all across this country. The freedom to have access to medication that women need for their bodies. And I wonder why the Conservatives are blocking this bill, which will provide medications not just for women, but also for diabetics. It's time for action, Mr. Speaker. It's time to ensure that there are true freedoms for women all across the country. This is time to stop blocking this.
From Calgary Forest Lawn.
After 9 years of this NDP Prime Minister, it doesn't feel like Canada anymore. Life is more unaffordable than ever. Canadians, the Governor of the Bank of Canada, even random Liberals are saying this government is not helpful. They're out of control spending and not worth the cost. Canadians are living in their cars and in tents because they can't afford housing. They're lining up at food banks in record numbers because they can't afford food and leaving in droves because they can't afford the high cost of living. When will the Liberals implement a common sense plan and bring in a dollar for dollar law, cap government spending so inflation and interest rates can come down?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we have put forward a budget that invests in the things Canadians need, first and foremost housing. And we're doing that by asking those at the very top to contribute a little bit more. And the good news, Mr. Speaker, is we are doing it in a fiscally responsible way. And you don't have to believe the partisans in any chair in this House. Talk to the analysts at Moody's, who last week reaffirmed Canada's AAA rating, the highest that exists, with a stable outlook. Doesn't get better than that, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Calgary Forest Lawn.
Speaker, common sense is chasing this finance minister. Just like in Alberta, she's speeding away from it. They've put taxpayers on the hook. $54 billion of taxpayer money is going to go to, just in interest to this Prime Minister's doubling of the debt. That means more money is going to bankers, bondholders, and this finance minister's Bay Street buddies than to doctors, nurses, and to the healthcare system. Why doesn't she pump on the brakes on the hypocrisy and let common sense catch up? Introduce a dollar for dollar law so inflation and interest rates can finally come down.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, last week, Moody's reaffirmed our AAA credit rating. These are objective analysts who have pointed out that Canada has the most fiscally responsible plan in the G7. But let's talk for a minute, Mr. Speaker, about hypocrisy. Conservative hypocrisy. Last week, Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader wrote an op-ed asking business leaders to attack our budget. I guess that's because he doesn't have the courage to come out and say the truth, which is he stands for those at the top, not regular Canadians.
The honourable member from Northumberland, Peterborough South.
Last week, the Governor of the Bank of Canada confirmed what millions of Canadians already know. Liberal spending is making life more expensive. 9 years of NDP Liberal deficits had led to a lost decade, lowering standards of living, record food bank usage, and a housing crisis. Will the government finally commit to a dollar-for-dollar rule that allow Canadians to feed their families and keep their homes?
Great job, Phil. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I respect the member for Northumberland, and he is better than actually misrepresenting the words of the Governor of the Bank of Canada. The reality is the Governor of the Bank of Canada, in testimony since the budget, has said, and I quote, "The budget does respect the fiscal guardrails that the government put in place." And I quote, that's what he said. And he said, quote, "keeping the debt to GDP ratio on a declining track, and importantly, keeping the deficit below 1% of GDP in future years. The budget commits to those guardrails, and that is helpful."
The honourable member from Northumberland, Peterborough South.
I will quote the Governor directly. He said that this Liberal budget is not helpful. It's more distraction, more denial. In order to cover up their record of massive deficits, which has led to over $54 billion of interest being paid in this budget alone. We'll pay more in the GST. We'll collect more in the GST, or collect more here than in the GST in terms of interest. We will pay more in interest than we will in healthcare transfers. When will they finally get their deficits under control so that Canadians can eat and they keep their homes?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, that is simply not true. I encourage people to read the testimony of the Governor of the Bank of Canada and news reports about that testimony. Here is what he said, and I am quoting precisely: "Keeping the debt to GDP ratio on a declining track, and importantly, keeping deficits below 1% of GDP in future years. The budget also commits to those guardrails going forward, and that is helpful." Those are the words of the Governor. People can just take a look at the transcript, Mr. Speaker.
Then I have the
will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. This Prime Minister is not worth the cost after 9 years. He's doubled the debt, doubled housing costs. He's increased spending by nearly 80%. What did we get for the money? The worst per person income growth in the entire G7 and the worst mortgage debt of all of those countries. When will he realize that the more he spends, the worse things get?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives have been talking down the economy for a long time now without understanding that Canada has actually the strongest macroeconomic performance in the G7. And our perspective is to put that solid footing of the Government of Canada in service of Canadians by investing in housing, by investing in dental care, by investing in childcare, by investing in the supports that Canadians need in this difficult time. His solution is for governments to invest less in Canadians for ideological reasons, to be there less for people when they need it most.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, more proof that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. He tells Canadians they've never had it so good. He doubled the debt, doubled housing costs, forced 2 million people to a food bank. He brags that he spends $87 billion on housing programs, and what did it get us? Got us the worst housing inflation of any country in the G7, the second worst out of nearly 40 OECD countries. Why does he always spend the most to achieve the worst?
Right. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think Canadians will take no lessons from a former housing minister who was in a government that didn't believe in investing in housing. Obviously, over decades, Mr. Speaker, the federal government had underinvested in housing, and it has led to the challenges we're facing now. That is why we are putting, and have been putting in service of Canadians since 2017, the solid fiscal position of the federal government to invest in Canadians, to invest in communities, to invest in housing, to help solve this challenge that people are facing around the world that we are solving despite
the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, he's absolutely right that we did not waste the billions of dollars that he's now put into his programs, but here are the results. The average rent for a one-bedroom when I was housing minister was $973, and we built 80,000 apartment units at that low rate when I was minister. Now the cost has more than doubled. Meanwhile, Stats Canada reports that incomes are down $17,000 per family. Why are Canadians making $17,000 less to pay double the price for a home?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Here's the question Canadians should be asking the Leader of the Opposition. Given that Canada has one of the strongest economic balance sheets in the G7 right now, country for country compared, should we be investing to support Canadians and create housing with that solid balance sheet, or should, as the Conservative Leader is proposing, we cut programs, we reduce investment, and we do less for Canadians? We should be putting the strong fiscal position of this government in service of Canadians. That's what we're doing. That's what he opposes.
The Honourable Member from Burnaby South.
Canadians are struggling.
I have a point of order.
Yes, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you. Madam Chair, you accused me, and I'll use your words, of interrupting everyone.
Yes.
That's a superlative. Interrupting everyone, which is unparliamentary. So, Madam Chair, I would bring that to your attention, and I would ask you to make a ruling as to whether or not that should be withdrawn. Does Ms. Thomas, interrupt everyone?
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics. Hey gang, what's up? Just Aaron right here, Question Period Canada. Pretty excited to bring you a committee investigation clip. These are always wild. We got the heavy hitters, Larry Brock, Michael Barrett, Rick Perkins, Shannon Stubbs, Stephanie Kusi, Michael Cooper, Michael Chong, Michael Barrett. Let's get into it. They're always interesting. The witnesses are always difficult. That's part of the fun. Let's check out this crazy stuff that's happening in committee. Let's go.
Your resolution to this would be raised on a point of order, which you cannot move a motion on a point of order.
Correct. I agree with you. You cannot move a motion on a point of order, Mr. Mohammed. But I think that this is requesting that the meeting be adjourned because it's now 5 minutes after 6.
I have the chair. I have the floor, Madam Chair. And I'm in the middle of a question round, and I've been interrupted numerous times by the members across the way.
And we have suggested at the beginning, when we went to this last round, that we had until 5 minutes after 6. I'm looking at the clock. It is now 5 minutes after 6.
Madam Chair,
this
point of order.
committee would like to continue
Madam-
with this discussion, I would like to hear from the committee with regard to adjournment. There's no debate on this. There's a question.
No, I do have the floor, Madam
You have
Chair.
the floor, but the meeting is over, Ms. Thomas.
It's
No,
not
it doesn't,
over.
It doesn't just end
5 minutes after
when I'm in the
6.
middle of a question round.
Yeah.
We had points of order that did that. We have to leave this room at a certain time, I'm told by the chair, by the clerk, and so we have to
I
vacate
don't know
the
that that's
room.
entirely true. Perhaps you could check with the clerk and see if we could
Clerk,
extend another
inform-
5 minutes.
Ms. Thomas, you seem to have this penchant for arguing with everyone who makes any suggestions.
Well, that's
we
quite
do
the
have,
accusation.
I was
Order.
told,
That
and
is
we heard,
inappropriate.
Mr. Lawrence, please allow me to speak. When we were going to this last round, Mr. Shampoo suggested that we should find out how much more time we have left so that we could do 25 minutes. The clerk informed me then that we had till 5 minutes after 6. It was clear, she said it, I repeated it. So this is not a
Point of order,
something I'm
Madam Chair.
making up.
Point of order, and you have a obligation to listen to my point of order. This is not optional.
go ahead with your point of order, yes.
No, it is not adjourned. And
not
I have a
adjourned
point of
because we
order,
didn't
and we're
call a
continuing
question.
on here because he raised a series of non-point of orders, which you, against the rules, recognize. That was against the rules. That got rid of her time. It would be an affront to democracy if you do not allow her to continue. This was clearly an obstruction of the process. Please continue to allow Ms. Thomas. Otherwise, I will be bringing a point of privilege.
Right, we now have, it's now 10 minutes after 6. Clerk, do we have time to finish this meeting?
That's up to the committee.
We don't have UC to do this.
Pardon?
Nope.
It's up to the
Not-
committee.
It's on the committee, sorry.
The clerk informs me it is up to the committee to decide whether they want to
I
continue.
have a point of order.
Yes, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you. Madam Chair, you accused me, and I'll use your words, of interrupting everyone.
Yes.
That's a superlative. Interrupting everyone, which is unparliamentary. So, Madam Chair, I would bring that to your attention, and I would ask you to make a ruling as to whether or not that should be withdrawn. Does Ms. Thomas, interrupt everyone? Because if she does, then your statement stands. But if it can be proven that she does not interrupt everyone, a superlative, then you must withdraw. I would ask for your ruling as the official chair of this committee.
I think, Ms. Thomas, to decide whether you interrupt everyone, I'm going to have to go back into the past blues and read every one of them to find out if this is true. But it is on the record, and if you like, I would withdraw the term everyone and say you often interrupt people in this committee, whether it's other members or witnesses or everyone who has something to say. If you disagree with them, you interrupt. Often you do that. This is a pattern that you have, and I don't like it because it's not in keeping with having a respectful meeting. And I'm going to state that clearly. We need to be respectful here. We need to have decorum here. We are a parliamentary committee. We're not a little group of people chatting around here and throwing stones at each other. So let's try and be respectful. So, Mr.
Sorry, point of order.
Yes.
You just said we don't throw stones at one another, but I seem to be the object to which you throw stones quite often.
Ms. Thomas, I think this is getting to be just a little bit too much. I correct anyone. I have corrected people who have interrupted everyone. I've corrected them, and each time to keep decorum in this committee. So I think it's time we go with the decorum in this committee, and I'm going to ask a question right now of this committee. Do you wish this meeting to continue, or do you wish this meeting to adjourn?
Recorded division. Recorded
All right,
division.
recorded division. Thank you. Clerk, can we record the division, please?
The question is to suspend the meeting, adjourn the meeting. Mr. Noor Mohammed.
Yes.
Mr. Couteau.
Yes.
Ms. Latanzio.
Yes.
Ms. Gainey. Oui. Monsieur Serré.
Oui.
Mr. Wall. No. Ms. Thomas.
No.
Monsieur Gourde.
No.
Mr. Lawrence. No. Mr. Shampoo.
Oui.
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics. What do you think, gang? Point of order, Mr. Chair. What is going on in these committee meetings? We do get the best of the best. Larry Brock, Garnet Genu, Rick Perkins, Michael Chong, Michael Cooper, Shannon.
Is to also have a climate plan. That is what our customers, Canada's customers, are requiring. That is what foreign investors are requiring. And we're seeing the results. In 2023, Canada had more FDI per capita than any other G7 country. That's because we have a strong economic plan that includes a strong climate plan.
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics. Hey gang, what's up? Just Aaron right here, Question Period Canada. Pretty excited to bring you a committee investigation clip.
Do you think it was fair to increase the carbon tax 23% when 70% of Canadians told you not to, as 2 million Canadians visit a food bank in a single month? Was that fair?
Mr. Hallen, 8 out of 10 Canadians get more money back than they pay in with the price on pollution. We also know that the only way to have a credible, effective economic plan in 2024 is to also have a climate plan. That is what our customers, Canada's customers, are requiring. That is what foreign investors are requiring. And we're seeing the results. In 2023, Canada had more FDI per capita than any other G7 country. That's because we have a strong economic plan that includes a strong climate plan.
Minister, your carbon tax is actually a tax plan and not an environmental plan, and the PBO on multiple occasions came to this committee and proved a lot of the stuff you're saying is misinformation and false. For example, he said just a few weeks ago that a majority of families pay more into this carbon tax than what they get into these rebates that you're talking about. Last time you were here, for example, in your own words, an average Albertan family gets $1,800 in rebates, but I have the PBO report here in my hand that says an average Albertan family pays $2,900 into the carbon tax. Do you think it's fair that an average Albertan family has to pay $1,100 more into the tax? Is that fair to them?
Mr. Hallen, I think the people who are trafficking in misinformation when it comes to a price on pollution are, I'm sad to say, the Conservatives.
PBO wrong?
The average 8 out of 10 Canadian families, very much including Alberta families,
but he said a majority of families are worse off.
Than they pay in on a price on pollution. That is simply the reality. It has been verified by economists across the country, including the most esteemed economists in Alberta. The reality is this is a revenue neutral plan which is giving money back to Alberta families, and I am delighted that we are now giving money back to small businesses across the country, including small businesses in Alberta. And the final thing that is just so important, and it's important for the province you and I love a lot, Alberta, is the only way for us as an open, trade-exposed economy to have an economic plan that actually works, to actually be able to attract foreign investment, to actually be able to sell what we produce, is to have a strong and credible climate plan. That's what our government has.
So, Minister, I think it's clear to see that by you ducking and dodging the facts that you absolutely are still peddling misinformation about the carbon tax. And someone who claims to love Alberta wouldn't take extra $1,100 in a carbon tax and what they get in rebates. So I just want to make that clear. Recently, as I move on, Mark Carney just testified yesterday at the Senate committee. Someone who will probably be your next leader, and as someone who's rumored to be also a leadership candidate in the next Liberal leadership race. We saw Mark Carney also duck and dodge the question of if he supported the carbon tax. So before you launch your campaign, we wanted to know, will you continue down the path of Justin Trudeau and quadruple the carbon tax?
So, Mr. Hallen, I'm not sure the best use of this committee's precious time is to indulge in political speculation
I think
and
the
political
Canadians need
horse
to know
racing.
if you're
I'm
running
sorry,
for
Mr. Hallen, I didn't
leadership,
interrupt you with your very
you'll quadruple
long
the tax.
comments. And so now I would ask you politely to do me the same courtesy. So let me just be clear, because you have waded pretty far into waters of political speculation. Our party has a leader, and our government has a prime minister. He has the full support of our cabinet and our
Fair
caucus.
enough, Minister, because I have a short amount of time.
Mr. Halland, please don't interrupt me.
On that note,
you used up your precious time speculating about party politics. You leave me
And
no
as a
choice
follow-up
but
to that
you give
question,
me no
Minister,
choice but to answer.
I just
and I'm
wanted to
quite
ask,
happy.
then do you
I'm sorry,
support
Mr. Halland.
his
I didn't
quadrupling?
interrupt you.
If we could just try to find the right balance here so we can hear and,
Sure.
and we can get some answers.
I'll move on then. Because
I wasn't finished with
wanted
my
to know-
answer,
that's,
Mr.
That's
Halland.
fine. I'll take my time
Point of
because I
order.
only have a limited amount
Point
of
of order.
time.
Chair, I think it's customary for when members ask questions to give witnesses equal a weighted amount of time to answer. And I don't believe that the minister has had her time to answer.
So what I do ask is for respect here in the room, and we do have the minister. It is precious time. We have 1 hour. I'm sure you want to hear from the minister and MP Allen. I'm sure you want to pose your questions. So let's find, like I said, the right balance to make this happen.
I'll move on to my next question because I only have a limited amount of time. Minister, under the 9 years of your government, rents have doubled, literally. They were half what they were before your government took over. Rent prices are outpacing income for the first time in 60 years. Your $89 billion photo op slush fund, supposedly for housing, after you announced that, has doubled rents. I want to know, how did you spend $89 billion to double rents?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Halland. And I am actually glad to see all of us paying attention to housing. I think it is one of the most pressing issues for Canada and Canadians, and that is why with this budget and with action we have taken, our government has put forward the most ambitious plan to get more homes built faster in Canadian history. With all of the measures taken together, will mean that nearly 4 million new homes are built by 2031. That is what Canada needs. That is what we are doing. That's what we're investing in. And conservative austerity will not accomplish that. It's also you also offer me a nice opportunity to point out that when your current leader was responsible for housing, he managed to get only 6 homes built. That is a record we're happy to stand against any day of the week.
Thank you, Minister, and we're going to...
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics. What do you think, gang? Point of order, Mr. Chair. What is going on in these committee meetings? We do get the best of the best. Larry Brock, Garnet Genu, Rick Perkins, Michael Chong, Michael Cooper, Shannon Stubbs, Michael Barrett, with Stephanie Cousy. The list goes on and on. They're always... Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Trudeau referred to me as a twofer.
And now, Pierre Poilievre's new candidate in Durham is a twofer.
Hey gang, what's up? Just Aaron right here, Question Period Canada. How you doing? So Jamil Giovanni from the introduction, you guys recognize him, right? Like, he does seem to be a secret weapon that Poilievre has in his toolbox.
Been titled Building a Strong Economy That Works for Everyone, when the economy is neither strong nor is it working for everyone. I think that should be quite obvious to anyone paying attention. In the spirit of my former colleague at the National Post, Rex Murphy, I'd like to take some time today to speak to the concerns of everyday hardworking Canadians and try to help make sense of how you can have a government calling a budget at this time and in this economy strong and working for everyone. The reality is I've been in Ottawa now for just over a month. I was sworn in to the House in April. And I think one of my key observations is that we have a Liberal government that is living in an alternate reality from the one I lived in before I was in politics and the one I cling desperately to every time I'm in here, because it seems as though in this economy we have Liberal elites experiencing one thing and we have everybody else experiencing something else. Just some things that I'd like to share with the Canadian people that I've observed since being sworn in April. For the last 2 weeks, I have heard the Liberal MP for Whitby defending high grocery bills and making excuses for the fact that it is very expensive for families to purchase the food they need, never mind the healthy food that they need. Earlier today, he was going on and on and on again. Last week he said, and I would like to quote him, "Mr. Speaker, I know that the member opposite feels that grocery prices are too high, and they have been certainly. However, the CPI index has shown that food prices are stabilizing in our economy, which is good news for Canadians." Now, I'd like to point out the obvious. Many Canadians hearing me speak right now might be thinking, is it good that high grocery costs are stabilizing? Shouldn't the objective of the government be to bring down the costs since they're so high? And this is a good window into the kind of thinking going on here. I mean, this is what I mean when I say you've got an economy for Liberal elites and everybody else. So let's continue exploring this. The day before the Liberal MP for Whitby made these comments that grocery prices are stabilizing despite being obscenely high, there was a new food bank opened in his own riding, Mr. Speaker. In Whitby, in his own riding, the day before he comes into Ottawa and says that things are going great and he's got good news for Canadians, there's a new food bank opening up down the street from his constituency office. This is an alternate reality. They are creating some kind of bizarre picture of what's going on in this country, and I think people in our country deserve to know that when they ask, how dare the Liberals produce a budget with the title, Building a Strong Economy That Works for Everyone?
Here's a closer look at Shamil Javani in committee. He seems pretty sharp. He's really tight on the House of Commons floor.
He says, and I quote, "If I move into a nicer place, it's basically like I'm working a minimum wage job. I'm just trying to make ends meet." Where does Harley fit into you exceeding your objectives?
Harley is the kind of person that was in mind when we developed the National Housing Plan. I'll be the first to say, although we may have exceeded the objectives that we've set in terms of number of units at the outset of the National Housing Strategy, we now need to do more because the circumstances have changed, and Harley's not the only person in that situation. Harley fits into our plan to help build more homes by accelerating the pace of home building, by reducing the cost of building, making it easier to build more homes. Harley fits into our plan when we're looking at helping people transition into home ownership. Harley fits into our plan when we look at the Renters' Bill of Rights that we're putting forward. There's a number of different...
Would it be fair to say, though, that Harley has every good reason to be concerned, perhaps hearing you speak, because under your government, mortgage payments have doubled, rent payments have doubled, and yet you seem to be having a very different tone and message when you talk about housing in this country than what a lot of young people. When I hear young people speak, I hear words like stuck, trapped, unfair, and you're out here saying you're exceeding objectives. That seems very tone deaf to what's going on.
So to be clear, I don't think that there has been enough done on housing and we need to do more. I'm not trying to say because we exceeded a target that was established in 2017 that all problems are solved, and I don't want to be misinterpreted in that regard. We need to do more, and I find it ironic when I hear some of these arguments being advanced by the Conservative side when you don't have measures in your plan to increase the pace of home building.
Forgive me if you have frustrations with what you regard to be our party's position, but I think young people across this country are rightly frustrated that we were promised affordable housing in 2015 when you first got elected. It's 9 years later, and the promises that you're making are identical, while things have only gotten worse. Now, I am aware that there is a liberal playbook that gets used against people who disagree with this prime minister. A playbook that likes to marginalize and vilify anyone who has the audacity to stand up and say what is happening in this country right now is not right. And that playbook the prime minister likes to use, likes to cast people who disagree with him as racists. And I would be welcoming the prime minister to try that with me. You know, based on our history, I don't think that's going to go so well.
And now, Pierre Poilievre's new candidate in Durham is a twofer.
Now, I'm not exactly sure what that means in reference to a human being.
For him. But I also believe that he is completely out of touch with the needs and desires, the hopes and dreams of our very diverse country and the diverse communities like the one I represent in Durham. He's welcome to take his claims that people who disagree with him are racist to my African father and see how that goes for him. He also uses this liberal playbook to marginalize and vilify Canadians who disagree with him by calling those of us who believe in traditional family values bigots. And I say to him, come to my riding, my diverse riding in Durham, and try that on us, where we have Christians and Muslims, Sikhs, Hindus, and Jews living together, all people who believe that mothers and fathers matter. He's welcome to try that with us. And I know his liberal playbook also likes to say that people who disagree with him don't care about the working class or don't care about vulnerable people. And I don't think that's going to work on me either. I am not a trust fund baby. Like most people in this country, I have clawed and I have scraped and worked hard for everything that I have. I don't think the Prime Minister can say the same thing. And the reality is this. He's welcome to try that message on people like my mom. She'd love to have a conversation with him. A woman who raised 3 children by herself. 68 years old, sorry mom. Continues to work hard every day because she cannot afford to retire in this NDP liberal economy. The liberal playbook is not going to work. They can try their greatest hits. Tune up the guitar. Tune up the banjo. The greatest hits aren't hitting anymore. And I'm here to deliver that message very, very clearly on behalf of my community in Durham and anyone else in this great country who is unhappy with what is happening and frustrated to feel like they are not able to say what is happening in their hearts and their minds, do not feel validated and affirmed by the reality they experience, not being echoed by many of the institutions across this country who have bought into a narrative that simply does not reflect reality.
So, Jamil Javani, what do you think? Leave a comment, please. We're interested to know what you think. We're growing this little channel about Canadian federal politics. It's fun. We do a live stream.
What's happening with your career right now, please?
I do indeed. Today I announced that I'll be vacating my seat as the Member of Parliament for Elma-Transcona effective March 31st to go work with the new government of Wab-Kinew in Manitoba as the Senior Advisor on Intergovernmental Affairs.
You've been here a good while. You've followed in the footsteps of your late father. Why the transition time now, other than obviously the new government?
Yeah, well, I'm really proud of all the work that we've done as a caucus here in Ottawa under Jagmeet Singh, and I'm really excited by the work that the government of Wab-Kinew is going to be doing in Manitoba. For me personally, this is an opportunity to continue on in the same vein of work, working for people, trying to have better public policy, but to get to do it from a position where I'm closer to home and I get to see a lot more of my young children and my wife and support her in her career as well.
The NDP caucus is split both sides of the aisle. You sit on the far side from Mr. Singh. Do you have any confidence still in Mr. Singh's leadership?
I absolutely have confidence in Jagmeet Singh's leadership. As I say, we're doing a lot of great work here in Ottawa. The new pharmacare deal, that the details of which are going to be announced shortly, is very exciting and I think is going to make a big difference in the lives of a lot of people, along with the new dental care plan, along with the anti-scab legislation that just went to committee yesterday. So there's a lot of great work here that's been happening under the leadership of Jagmeet Singh. And I've been very honored to be a part of that work, but looking forward to get to do similar kinds of work while being closer to home with my family.
You used some, I believe, unparliamentary language, the Speaker called it today. Was this, I think you were describing...
In 2001,
you're still the one that I love, the only one that I dream of, you're still the one I kiss goodnight.
Don't have to listen to Bill's Bandy Doughboy or Team Sexy. I'll tell you what, I'll have a little drink. Celebrate your little picnicky.
This place is going to shit again. You haven't started the recycling program. The park is a complete mess.
Frig off, Burb. Listen for a play at the...
Leahy, I'm not judging anybody here, all right? Okay?
Please don't show this to anyone.
I'm going to a hospital. I'm not going to a hospital, you idiot. Just think about car. Look at my...
It's a flesh wound. Ricky shot himself. Like, he shot himself, and then he's yelling at us, man. That's ridiculous, dude. He's all yelling at us. We didn't even do anything, man. It's his fault. What did we get for it? Bullshit.
He gives us his all. Speed, endurance, power. Yet his wild spirit burns bright. Spark of ancient myth. Pride of king and conqueror. He was the backbone of civilization. History was forged to the beat of his hooves. Even now, he still lays claim to the heart, with all the bold beauty that is the horse. Summer sets off fireworks in the mountains of southern Montana. Spurred by heat and hunger, wild horses converge on the cool green heights, and sparks begin to fly. Stallions spar and court young mares in a drama as old as the hills. The Mustang has become a symbol of the American West. But some say he's a newcomer to these parts, even a trespasser. The truth is tangled in the long and winding history of his kind. It began some 60 million years ago in the forests of North America. Living on leaves, a creature the size of a fox walks the underbrush on padded toes. In time, forests give way to grassy plains. Legs grow long and toes become nimble hooves in a body built for speed. About 1 million years ago, the first true horses spread across land bridges to Asia and Europe. Their numbers swell, then slowly decline, perhaps due to climate change or the impact of a two-legged predator. To Ice Age hunters, the herds must have seemed inexhaustible, but by 8,000 years ago, horses were extinct in the Americas and dwindling elsewhere into memory and myth. Then somewhere on the steppes of Eurasia, at least 4,000 years ago, the horse inspired someone as more than just a meal. It may have begun as a shaman's ritual or a reckless teenage prank. But some brave soul took a quantum leap and changed the world forever. The horse utterly changed our sense of distance and speed. He carried us forward in space and time and made our world smaller. Great equestrian cultures arose and thundered across antiquity. Today, most have vanished, but here on the steppes of Mongolia, little has changed since the time when the horse became a way of life. Nomads still measure their wealth in livestock and move vast herds with the seasons. Small but hardy, Mongolian horses endure a harsh climate and grow a thick winter coat. When pasture is meager, they can survive on very little. Mongolian nomads also herd sheep, goats, and cows, but horses are their greatest pride. Revered, they are largely reserved for riding and one other important role. Mongolia's national drink, called Irak, is fermented mare's milk. Life in the saddle begins early, in keeping with a local proverb. A Mongolian without a horse is like a bird without wings. In July, thousands of nomads set up camp on the edge of the capital city, Ulaanbaatar. They come to celebrate Naadam, an ancient religious festival. National competitions of traditional sports are held, including 2 days of horse racing. One of the country's top horse breeders, Hang Medic, traveled over a week to take part in what will be his 30th Naadam. From a herd of 400 head, he has brought his 12 fastest horses. Also in tow are his grandchildren. For good reason. Riders must be under 12 to compete at Naadam. Training, however, is no child's play. It's what Hang Medic lives for.
Horse training is a passion. My father was a great trainer, and he passed that on to me. It's the same for most Mongolian people. We compete at Naadam to see who has the best horse, and because we're so proud of our horses. A fine racehorse is a symbol of good luck and happiness.
On the day of the first race, preparations begin at dawn. Hats and bright silks will help families spot their little jockeys at a distance. The distinguishing mark of a racehorse is a leather tail wrap, always wound clockwise. Forelocks are also bound. Hang Medic enhances the look with a charm bearing Mongolia's national emblem. He has high hopes for this young stallion. With an offering of mare's milk, Hang Medic's wife invokes the sacred powers of nature to bless horses and riders. A circle of incense purifies. A drop of Iraq protects from harm. An ancient Buddhist chant rings out for luck. Some 500 riders will compete in the first race. Parents on horseback swell their ranks. By tradition, they circle clockwise at a staging area near the finish line. But the running of the race is not yet at hand. The starting point lies more than 15 miles away in the open steppe. To reach that point at a walk will take the racers some 3 hours, which leaves time to kill for everyone else. Nomads like Hang Medic take the moment to catch up with old friends and trading partners. For people who live much of the year in relative isolation, there's also the irresistible allure of new faces. For now, small talk belies the drama that's erupting miles away. As 500 horses reach the starting point and the race begins. Long before they can see the racers, spectators crowd the finish line. According to myth, the dust kicked up by winning horses showers happiness and prosperity on all those it touches. Frontrunners have been galloping for nearly 30 minutes. By Western standards, this might qualify as an extreme sport. But these are the descendants of Genghis Khan, who forged the largest land empire ever known on horseback. The blue sash of victory goes to the first 5 horses. A flash of green tells Hang Medic his granddaughter has placed. But a riderless horse sends him off in search of his youngest grandson. After an initial flurry, racers trickle in for another hour. Herd instinct alone will keep a horse going, even one that lacks the fitness and conditioning required for a long-distance run. For some, the strain is too much. When a horse dies on the racetrack, the trainer is dishonored. But the child who has lost a beloved pet reaps only heartbreak. A fall near the starting point dashed the hopes of Hang Medic's grandson. His horse is safe, his bruises minor, but his 6-year-old pride will sting until the races are over. Nadam concludes in the National Stadium with a parade of champions. Hang Medic is twice a winner. His grandchildren take 2 of his horses through their victory laps. A herald sings the praises of the winning horses. Medals and mare's milk do them honor. But for each little rider, the highlight is a kiss from the President of Mongolia. No other nation makes more of the horse. Fiery steed, faithful servant. He is all good things to the Mongolian people. In return, they may succeed in saving the last truly wild horse on Earth. Before the rise of civilization, his kind ranged throughout Asia and Europe. Alert and aggressive, they were elusive prey with their camouflage of tawny coat, their upright two-toned mane. These horses were already rare in 1878, when Russian explorer Nikolai Przewalski returned from Mongolia. He carried a skull and hide that would prompt the announcement of a new species. In a race for specimens, stallions were slaughtered to subdue mares. Mares were killed to secure foals. Dozens died en route to zoos and animal collectors in the West. Przewalski's horses were last sighted in the wild in the 1960s. A decade later, fewer than 300 survived, in captivity only. This endangered species was declared extinct in the wild. In 1992, 16 Przewalski horses from European reserves touched down in Ulaanbaatar. Their journey was the crowning achievement of Dutch conservationists and Mongolian authorities. Transports were blessed with mare's milk, as the horses arrived at a nature reserve established in their honor. The homecoming delighted local people. Their name for the horses is Taki. The word also means spirit. Today, some 80 free spirits roam 120,000 acres under watchful eyes. Park rangers closely track the animals' health and behavior. Breeding success is high. 2 generations have been born in the reserve. To increase the gene pool, horses are still brought in from the west. But prospects for a self-sustaining population are promising. Mongolia's preservation of the Taki seems a fitting tribute to an animal who has given us so much. Domesticated, the horse revolutionized our world, but in the process, he was also transformed. The legendary Arab is just one of more than 150 breeds, some honed for work, some for sport, others for sheer show. The Spanish horse boasts one of the oldest pedigrees. His speed and stamina were praised by the Romans. The famous Spanish riding school in Vienna was founded in his name. A dancer's grace made him a favorite of monarchs and earned him the title Royal Horse of Europe. Today, he inspires a new generation. At the Royal Andalusian School of Equestrian Art in the town of Jerez in southern Spain. Few gain admission here. Only first-rate horses, trainers, and students. A strict curriculum has produced several Olympic competitors. The school also keeps tradition alive. Once a week, the public is invited in to enjoy the splendors of another age. In 18th century costume, riders recreate the height of classical horsemanship as it was practiced throughout the courts of Europe. Most spectacular are the airs above the ground. Horses naturally leap and kick when fighting, Centuries ago, cavalry mounts were trained to perform these moves in battle. Eventually, each gesture became an end in itself, as formal as ballet. A supreme effort, the capriole demands vertical loft, virtually in place. Few can perform this exacting dance with the power and precision of the Spanish horse. The purity of the breed is proudly protected in Spain, yet his bloodlines extend far and wide. For this was the horse who once conquered a new world. Some 500 years ago, Spanish explorers rode upon the shores of the Americas. Some native people mistook man and mount for a single fearsome creature. But soon they would make the horse their own. Through stealth and trade, Native Americans embraced the horse. It was said they came to each other like long-lost brothers. Some called him Sky Dog. He opened vast horizons in this life and haunted their visions of the afterlife. But this cult of the horse would not last. By the 19th century, Native Americans had been robbed of land and livelihood. Their beloved sky dogs were shot or simply set loose. Scores of Indian ponies joined strays and runaways, already thriving in the wilderness. By 1900, over 1 million horses roamed the American West. But not for long. To make way for cattle and sheep, public lands were cleared of animals considered worthless pests. They were slaughtered by the thousands for pet food, fertilizer, and mere sport. In the 1950s, public outcry denounced the abuses. Still, numbers had dropped below 20,000 by 1971, when a federal law was finally passed to protect the wild horse as a living symbol of the pioneer spirit of the West. Today, the Bureau of Land Management oversees some 45,000 horses on public lands in 10 states. On the Montana-Wyoming border, the Pryor Mountain Wild Horse Range is home to a herd of about 160. Most live in small family groups of several mares, their foals, and a single dominant stallion. His role is to guard his harem and protect his growing offspring. This stallion, known as Raven, is one of the most dominant on the range. A heap of fresh droppings called a stud pile alerts him that potential rivals may be in the vicinity. A band of young bachelor stallions prompts Raven to move his family to a safe distance. Then he advances on the intruders, and confrontation becomes inevitable. Raven may be outnumbered, but at 10 years old, his maturity and experience give him the advantage. As he enters the fray, his band stays put on the sidelines. Most clashes between stallions are more about asserting rank than inflicting harm, and serious injuries are rare. In the end, the bachelors move on unscathed but chastened, and Raven returns to his mares. Occasionally, even mature stallions form alliances. A stud named Starman acts as a subordinate or lieutenant stallion to Flash, who has a mare and foal of his own. Flash tolerates Starman's presence, but allows him no access to his lone mare. In summer, a waterhole fed by melting snowbanks attracts this small band. The mare enjoys a soothing mud bath, while her 3-month-old foal plays with the idea. But for now, the water holds no appeal for Flash's lieutenant stallion. Starman picks up the scent of another mare and sets off in hot pursuit. The mare's yearling son tries to intercept Starman, but fails to impress such a mature stallion. This mare's own stallion must be just out of sight, a boon for Starman. Still, she rejects his advances. In the end, she gets away, and Starman can only observe the tactics of a more successful suitor. At times, the Pryor Mountains seem heaven on earth for horses. Though much of the terrain is arid and winters are harsh, summer pastures can be glorious. The horses have few predators to fear. Most were eliminated by ranching and land development. With high fertility rates, the horses' numbers can increase by 10, even 20% a year. And that means trouble in paradise. In the last 3 decades, the Bureau of Land Management has removed more than 100,000 wild horses from the range. The roundups are intended to protect public lands from overgrazing and ensure the health of the herds. Excess animals are placed in adoption programs, but supply far exceeds public demand. Horses deemed unadoptable live out their days in holding pens. Even now, the fate of America's wild horses remains an open-ended question. Some 4,000 years of domestication have failed to deprive the horse of his wild instincts. His natural impulse is to flee the company of humans. Brian Newbert makes a living not breaking, but in his words, starting wild or green horses. This 2-year-old quarter horse stud, born on the open range, has never been handled. On his ranch in Northern California, Brian is about to make first contact. Brian will chase the horse until he turns to face his pursuer. The goal is capture the animal's attention and keep it.
I'll ask again. Good. Now let's see if he leaves with his hindquarters or if he leaves with the whole horse. See, here's the first little part is going to happen here in just a second, I think.
Subtle shifts of body language keep the horse focused on Brian.
If his attention wanders, I might see if I can get another step closer. As long as he's doing that, I'll just let that soak in. And I'll take another step. And I'll take another one here. He's having trouble with it, but he's trying. He's gonna have to leave here pretty soon. And I'll try to direct him back. There, he adjusted in the rear quarters. That's what I'm gonna need here.
Within about 15 minutes, the young stallion has mastered the maneuver. Now Brian presents a new challenge.
I might do just a little swinging here and see if he can stand that. And I'll see if I can put that on there without hitting him in the face. And I'll just, as I come forward, just let that go. And it's kind of scary. And you can see that it's troubling to him a little. So I'll just put just a little pressure till he finds his way toward me. See, he keeps thinking his answer is out of here, but the answer's right there.
The horse turns to Brian for reassurance, a critical breakthrough.
Now he might reach for me. Let's see if he come in here. I'll see if I can get another half a step without scaring him. See how he's reaching for me? Now here's a spot where you want to watch their ears, because some of them they'll take a run at you. Now I'll just wait here till he reaches. Like that. See him smelling me instead of... There's the first, second time he's ever been touched by a human, or he touched a human, I guess, instead of... Now again, let's see if this head shaking will disappear. I'll just keep a little tension there, and I'll see if he'll reach for me. And pretty soon I'll reach for him, like right there. We sort of met one another. A little bit of touching there. A little bit more here. See, he's finding out he can touch me and reach for me now. In a horse, there's a spot in there where they can just turn loose emotionally. You can see in their eye and their face a change that comes over them. And they'll begin to drop their head and their eyes will soften, and you can just see that they're beginning to trust you. And then you can move right on and really advance then. I'll get my weight shifted back. He's feeling a whole lot better about things now. He's finding out I can touch him and he won't get hurt.
Less than half an hour after the first touch, Brian tests the saddle.
Kind of important to swing this on so that it doesn't hit them. So this grab will gradually just lays right over on their back like that. I don't mind seeing one buck with the saddle because being a prey animal, that's his responsibility to not let anything stay up there. That's where the predator has the best advantage. If he can get above and stay with them, then he can have himself a meal. Pretty dreamy now, but we'll see what he's like when he feels that saddle on there. I'd rather he test the saddle out before I get on than after I get up there. Now I'm going to move him off, but ever so softly, if I can. I'm not trying to make him buck. Okay, maybe I'll give him a little consoling. Did you get scared, Bolly?
It's been less than 2 hours since Brian began work, a fairly routine first session. He'll leave the saddle in place for a few more hours, then give the young stallion a well-earned rest until morning. Yesterday's fear gives way to recognition and trust. Today will be another turning point. Social animals feel safest in a group. As a comfort to the young stallion, Brian has corralled several other horses.
See, if he wiggles, I'll just wait here till he stands put. Pet him over here as if it was my leg, and maybe get myself kind of set here before he gets untracked. I might let him go right out that way. And I'll just ask him to go. If he gets up set, if he gets scared, wants to run, I'll just try to go with him. People ask me about this new way of working with horses. As far as I know, it's been around as long as there's been horses and man interacting with one another. I don't know how the first man could have ever got on a horse for the first time without having something working for him. I'll get a little bolder as he gets a little more confidence. I'll ask him here to come back to me with this rein little, and he did.
The young stallion's first ride lasts no more than 15 minutes and prompts a simple reward.
Hey, kid. This just kind of soothes them sometimes. Give them a little hugging. This is a place where a lot of them just can't stand you have you that close. And if you can show them that it's okay to be this close, why, it's a real relaxing, soothing kind of thing for them. They really have to trust you.
By day 3, it's time to abandon the security of the corral. A whole new life is beginning for the young stallion.
He gets so he can trust me a whole lot more today, I see.
And Brian is left to ponder an age-old mystery about the nature of horses.
I often wondered how in the world would they allow somebody to get up on their back and guide them around. They'll take us miles and miles till they're totally, tired, pull wagons and pack loads and all kinds of things, when actually they could kick us or hurt us or buck us off any time, and yet they'll just work their hearts out for us if it's presented to them in a way that they can understand. Pretty special animal, really.
Special indeed. No more than 60.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here?
Maybe there's a little grass growing right along here. Some happy little things.
I love you, you love me. We all own our own bodies, so marry who you want and do whatever drugs you choose. And when it's time, you can die with dignity by determining your own end-of-life plan.
Hi, Maria!
Hi, Officer Winkles!
How you doing today?
I don't have to answer that question.
That is correct!
I'm recording you!
Am I being detained?
Nope!
Which I can legally do because I'm in a public place!
Come back if you have a warrant!
Alrighty!
Know your rights!
Yay!
Okay, Gumshoes, Carmen Sandiego is in a country where socialism failed. That narrows it down to Venezuela, Cuba, the former Soviet Union, Moldova, Laos, Vietnam, Albania, Angola.
So we did some digging into your past.
Oh, the suspense is killing me! But we still haven't solved the case, Holmes. Why is marijuana a Schedule I drug?
Elementary, my dear Watson. Nixon and racism.
What?
You okay? I don't know. Hey man, it's alright. It's alright. We've got qualified immunity. Qualified immunity. It's not for you, it's just for me. I shot your dog.
I shot your wife.
I get to go on with my life.
My favorite part is where the character says, I do not want green eggs and ham. And then Sam I Am says, that's fine, you don't have to eat them. That's your right. The end. It's a short book.
Here we see one of the last taxicab monopolies struggling for life. Competitors have entered their ecosystem.
Do you know what eminent domain abuse is? It's when the government decides the neighborhood of make-believe is better used by a Taiwanese LCD manufacturer.
Today we have a real senator. Hello, Senator.
How are you doing?
What is your favorite color?
I would have to say blue.
Me too. Tell me, why did you sell all your stock right before the crash?
I mean, it's literally just the tragedy of the commons, but they made it cute.
And that sound means we're in international waters. I'm gonna marry a robot and sell my kidney on eBay.
My dearest Rowena, today the district attorney filed criminal charges against a two-door sedan.
Carmen Sandiego is hiding in a country that contains an American military base. Is she in Australia, Bahrain, Belgium, Brazil, Bulgaria, the British Indian Ocean Territory, Cuba, Germany, Djibouti?
Menace.
Circle, square, rectangle, war factory.
All right, Jack, where is your gay wedding cake?
I refuse to bake a gay wedding cake, and you can't force me to. It's my right.
That is your right, but it is my right to kick you off of this show. Please leave.
Yep.
You homophobic bearded meat goblin.
I just want enough to warm it up some. I don't want to set it on fire. It's very easy to set it on fire.
Well, today on This Old House, we're at the city zoning office because they think our new porch is 2 inches too close to the sidewalk, which is f***ing bullshit because their sidewalk is too far away from the street,
which they'd know about if they'd read any of the emails I'd sent them over the past 18 months. So join us as we waste our whole f***ing day on the
The premiere of Thomas the High-Speed Rail has been delayed. Again. And at the 10 Bitcoin level, you receive a handsome tote bag.
Quack! Good one! Quiet! Very good! Queen! What else starts with the letter Q?
Space lasers.
Oh.
John Podesta and Hillary Clinton had an email exchange about hot dogs.
Where do we get these puppets?
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and you have a right to defend your house with firearms. With firearms.
Justin Trudeau will do just about